the celebrations are still going on, but somewhere in there in the background is Jason Light getting ready for the new league year. So kind of walk me through the calendar here. If you're the GM of the Super Bowl champs, I mean, what's first on the docket for the Bucs?
I think first of all, you've got to assess the players that are going to be unrestricted free agents on your football team. I think that's the first thing you've got to do, and I think they've already started to do that. I mean, I'm sure that they've got some guys up in the offices that have done that throughout the year, but now they've got to prioritize and kind of see who they want to, be back first and foremost, and then try and determine what they can afford. The problem is, Dan, NFL still is yet to give them a final floor, as far as what the salary cap floor is going to be. We're assuming around 181 million, but it could change a little bit. So again, trying to budget without knowing exactly how much money you have in the bank doesn't work very good for me, and I imagine it doesn't work very good for NFL teams either.
Based on what they were able to do last year, it was kind of kind of a fix, I guess, for Shaquille Barrett, players like that, Chris Godwin, kind of hanging off on things to have the ability to bring in a Rob Gronkowski and Tom Brady on a budget, for lack of a better term. Are they in a bit of a hole now because of that thinking last year?
No, not really. Dan, Mike Greenberg, who takes care of the cap, is Jason Light's right hand man. Um, he does such a good job with this cap, and the team is in the top 10 as far as the most available cap money right now. That's before they even do any restructures or anything. And there's plenty of guys in this football team that could give them some cap relief. So I don't, listen. Greg Shannon told me a long time ago, if you want to keep a football player, you'll find a way to keep a football player. Very, very, very rarely are you going to let a very good football player go that's part of your future based on just the salary cap. Now, there are a few teams this year. The Saints are one. The Falcons are another team that are really, really above the salary cap, and they're going to have to let some good football players go. But teams who have been fairly responsible, like the Buccaneers, they are not going to have as many problems as people think. They can clear cap room, with just a few strokes of the pen, a few phone calls to a couple guys, and move money around, add a few years on a deal, spread some money out that way. There's definitely ways that they can create some money. I don't think anything they did last year is hurting them this year.
Now, when you look at the list of guys they need to tend to, who do you think is the top of the list, and where do they need to start first?
There's several guys. A fan favorite and a guy that's just been so vital over the last 9 years is Lavonte David. He's an unrestricted free agent. I think he wants to be back. Certainly, the Buccaneers want him to be back, and I think he's a crucial part of that defense. He and Devin White combined to be the two best linebackers in the league. At least by the end of the season, they were playing that way. And I don't think there's any way that the Buccaneers want to let Lavonte David go. They've also got Chris Godwin, another piece of the puzzle that they really think has a bright future. And we saw Chris Godwin 2 years ago, or not 2 years ago, but year before last, over 1,000 yards and was a Pro Bowler. Had some injury issues this year, but is one of the best young receivers in the league. And then you go down, you've got Shaquille Barrett. Now that's the question mark in my mind because Shaquille Barrett wasn't playing like a 16 or $20 million a year player earlier in the year, in my opinion, but he really came on in the playoffs. When you look at the New Orleans game, the Saints game, of course, the Packers game, and then even in the Super Bowl, he was playing up to that level of a $20 million a year player. So trying to determine what he's worth and the length of a contract is something that the Buccaneers are going to have to try and figure out. But again, pass rushers just don't grow on trees. They're not just floating around out there. And so, you've got to determine, if we draft a guy, is he going to be able to put up the production as a rookie that a veteran like Shaquille Barrett does? But those, I think, are the three main guys. There's questions: is Leonard Fournette going to be back? Antonio Brown? I think Rob Gronkowski will be back for sure. But those are really, I think, the main guys that the team is focused on right now, trying to determine, who's going to be back and how are they going to get them back.
I think we learned the hard way Vita Vea's real value to this team, because when he came back in the postseason, it did make Shaq's life a little bit easier, and Jason Pierre-Paul as well. Do you think that they've got to try their best to get all 11 in place, or will they try to improve this team even more through the draft, or if there's a free agent out there elsewhere?
The good thing, Dan, about being a Super Bowl winning football team, there's not a lot of holes on your football team. Meaning, with that 32nd pick in the first round, they can move up or they could even move back and pick up some picks. They don't necessarily have to have a player step in like Tristan Wirfs did last year or Winfield Jr. did this year and or last year, and be impact players. There just aren't many holes. So when you look at it, in my opinion, if it's not broke, don't fix it. I mean, try and keep those 11 guys on defense together because it was very successful. Obviously, I mean, to keep the Chiefs out of the end zone in the Super Bowl is just a masterful job by Todd Bowles and his players. So I don't know that I don't know that they're worried about drafting guys who are going to step in and be impact players, but you know what you have with those 11 guys. You know what you have. You bring in a rookie, it's always a crapshoot. First round draft picks are still, Dan, after all these years, only about 50% successful. And now you're talking about down at the bottom end at number 32. That's essentially a second round pick. And so that percentage drops even lower. So if I were Jason Light and Mike Greenberg and the Glazer family and Bruce Arians, I would try and keep as many of these guys together as I could, because we saw the success just last week at Raymond James Stadium.
Who is the most interesting free agent on this team for you? You just said, the value and maybe the priorities, but take a guy like Leonard Fournette, who came here, under humble circumstances. He's part of a team that he loved, yet there's got to be a full-time role for a guy like that out there somewhere.
Yeah, I don't, Leonard's not going to break the bank anywhere. And with the salary cap being lower than it was proposed to be before COVID and the pandemic really cut down the revenue. Of course, the salary cap is based on the revenue, and the revenue was down because of COVID, no fans, and those kind of things. So, he may have garnered more money, if it was a normal year, but he's not going to get a ton of money thrown his way at the running back position, in my opinion. So he is a good candidate to come back, maybe on another 1 year deal at a team friendly cost. But Leonard Fournette was a big part of this playoff run. There's no question about it. I mean, Ronald Jones missed time with a broken finger, and then he missed a couple of weeks with the COVID situation. He missed that first playoff game against Washington, and Leonard Fournette played really well down the stretch and was a big part of this team. And his teammates really liked this guy, which is kind of crazy because that was the anti Leonard Fournette sentiment in Jacksonville, right? Kind of a head case, a troubled guy, not a great locker room guy, but he really blossomed into that this year, under Bruce Arians, and of course having a guy like Tom Brady to keep guys in check and set an example certainly helps. But he's an intriguing guy, certainly. My big question mark is Shaquille Barrett. I just don't know what to do. Again, earlier this year, I would have said you got to let this guy walk. You can't pay him a ton of money. But he wants to be back. I know he does, but he also wants to get paid. This is really his last opportunity for a long-term deal to secure his family's future. I mean, look, he made $16 million last year. That would secure my family's future and then their family's future too. But again, I see what he wants to do and what he deserves. It's just unfortunate for him in a COVID year. He may not get the money that he deserves.
Do the Bucs need to address the quarterback situation sooner rather than later?
That's a question mark that is going to be debated until Tom Brady retires or until the Buccaneers make a decision. Earlier this week, on our podcast, Jason Light said this team really likes Blaine Gabbert, and he would be in the mix if for some reason Tom Brady weren't the quarterback of this football team in the future. But I don't think that's where this team is going. I think this team would, if it fell into place, a guy they really liked were to be there at that 32nd pick, or maybe in the second round, maybe they take a gamble on him, because again, you just won a Super Bowl. You don't have a lot of holes. This is an opportunity where you can kind of take a chance on a guy, maybe like a Kyle Trask, somebody that I suggested a couple weeks ago in a column that I wrote on pewterreport.com. I mean, he's a Tom Brady clone in a sense. He's not a very mobile guy. He doesn't have a Lamar Jackson cannon type arm, but he's a smart guy. He's a good leader. He's liked by his teammates, and he's a fairly accurate passer. All you got to do is ask Nick Saban how good a guy like Kyle Trask is. But yeah, they've got to address it at some point. But who knows? Maybe they see the formula in the fact they haven't been able to find a franchise quarterback in however many years, 46 years. Maybe their formula is to find the best free agent out there on the market and bring him to Tampa Bay the way they did like Tom Brady. The problem is there's not very many Tom Bradys in the world, and there certainly wouldn't be that many on the free agent market.